Hey, what's up, podcast? It's Jeff. Just want to jump in here. This is a special bonus episode of Teach Better Talk. This is actually going to be the audio recording from a Facebook Live that our team is doing every single day, Monday through Friday, at 8 a.m. Eastern Time in our Facebook private group. You can get in that group at teachbettergroup.com or go on to Facebook and just search Teach Better Team. You'll see our page and then you'll see the group. Get in there. So here we go, a special bonus episode of Teach Better Talk pulled from one of our Facebook Live videos in our private group at teachbettergroup.com. Hope you enjoy.
Teach Better team. My name's Ray Heward. I'm with Becky Thal, and we are two members of the Teach Better team, excited to hang out this morning for our daily drop-in happening every single morning, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday at 7 a.m. Central, 8 a.m. Eastern. Becky, how are you? I miss your face.
I miss you too. This is my first official daily drop-in because I try to get my own feet on the ground.
Wow. Well, you were on kind of that batch of teachers who kind of kicked off remote learning very quickly. So obviously these aren't required from our team. Like, people can pop in as they want. But I kind of messaged you last week. I'm like, Becky, I miss you. Will you come on a daily drop-in?
Yes. And I was like, yes, I could finally see the light of day. So yeah, I would love to.
And you have a lot of insight to share because you've literally been in the trenches for 2 weeks. And while I don't want to put you on the spot for this entire drop-in, this really is a blessing because you are in that batch of educators who really has been dabbling with some things, have found some hurdles. And while I all think everybody listening has their own little divots in the road and also has found solutions that probably works really well with their community, but may not work with all communities, yeah, I would love for you to share everything and anything today because it might help somebody out.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we just started week 3, but in some respects it feels like we've started month 3.
I know, right? Really, I know.
With this scenario, but I know it's, I keep track of what a lot of different teachers are doing around the country. And I know that, yourself included, you're kind of just starting to connect with the students. And I am still kind of adjusting as I'm going along. And I think that's the main thing is you have to show yourself patience and grace, particularly the first couple of weeks, because you go through a roller coaster of emotions just in one day, Yeah,
I can only imagine. And I do want to get into all of that as we get started here and people continue to just kind of pop in as we are early in our live together. I do want to remind everybody that if you're listening, on the Teach Better Talk podcast or watching this on YouTube, you can come be a live participant in our private group at teachbettergroup.com. You can ask questions, you can participate, kind of go through all these pieces. We are streaming through Be Live right now, which you can see with like this border we have and the cute little logo up in the corner. And because of that, we can't see who's posting unless you put your name at the bottom of your comment. So please try and practice that so we can talk directly to you because we do love saying hello to all of our, kind of regulars in our daily drop-in, but also the newbies that continue to come in every single morning. So Becky, if we have a ton of newbies in our group who may not know not only your role in the Teach Better team, but also your role as an educator, would you mind kind of giving us a quick little bio? Who is the fabulous Becky from New Jersey?
Well, these days I'm not sure anymore. No.
Oh, stop.
No. I'm a 5th grade math and science teacher from New Jersey. I live near the coast. So that's been nice because I've been able to kind of go over to the beach and just, check some things out. And, that's been helpful for kind of some mindfulness. But I connected with the Teach Better team last summer. And I do a lot of things with social media, related to social media and data analysis. Yeah. And I was at the Teach Better 19 conference, which was phenomenal. And that's where I got to meet a lot of you in person, in the flesh. And and I'm already, everybody is like kind of looking forward to getting back to normal and of course, Teach Better 20 and be awesome.
Yes. Well, good. Yeah, no, I think that it's been such a blessing that you connected with us last summer because you not only have provided so much insight just as an amazing educator, but also you continue to support a lot of different areas, whether it be Twitter during Mastery Chat, our Facebook group. You do a ton of kind of analyzing what our network needs so we can make sure that we serve them the best way possible. And so you are just so wonderful. I love that we've, been connected for almost a full year, almost.
Thank you.
So
Yeah.
we're getting close to our anniversary, Becky. It's a big deal.
We are. You have to send me flowers. No, I'm just
I do. I will send you a large bouquet of flowers. It'll be beautiful. So when we kind of went into this remote learning coronavirus COVID-19 epidemic, you actually had a very different role than a lot of teachers that I was immediately talking to. And that's probably at fault to me because a lot of the teachers that I was in connection with were, Midwest, West Coast. And I didn't really realize that your state, your district in New Jersey actually took a different approach for a lot of different reasons. But it caused you right off the bat to have different stresses than I was experiencing and a different atmosphere. So can you kind of give us a lens? What was the last 2 weeks like for you? And do you feel like now you have your feet on the ground during all of it?
So yes, I do feel like I have my feet on the ground because I think that should be encouraging for a lot of people who are just starting this part of it. But similar to what a lot of teachers experienced, there was little time. We'd heard that there was possible closures coming, but next thing we knew, on Friday the 13th, it was announced. It was the Friday the 13th to remember.
It was.
And they announced that afternoon, and we had an inkling that we might not even be coming back that Monday, the 16th. So we sent our students home with what we thought they would needed. We're very fortunate in my district that, really in my school building, I'm in a 5-6 school building, so it's an upper elementary, and our students are all 1-to-1 Chromebooks. So that was huge. They were, used to a lot of ed tech tools and things, but it was almost like that Friday, which they gave us a half day. They gave the students a half day, I should say. And we had the second half of the day to plan, but that went by very, very quickly. So that Friday was honestly a blur because it was almost a crash course for the kids. It's like, okay, again, let's show you where you get your email, access your email from, and let's make sure you can get onto this website and that website. So, and then when Monday came, initially we were not able to connect with the students through Google Chat and Google Meet. And that, I think, was my initial panic was, how am I going to teach these kids? And I know that there's a lot of, legal issues surrounding that, which, everything's a learning curve. So that was an angle that I hadn't really even thought about. And, and our district had concerns about. And then within 2 days, I think, home, they had said, no, we've lifted those restrictions and you're able to connect. And that for me was almost like an early Christmas. I was so excited.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think that as you were talking about this learning curve, you were the one that was experiencing it like in the moment. And that was the actually very interesting to me, kind of like living vicariously through you, because we had a lot of teachers asking a lot of questions, but the reality was that things were changing every hour because nobody knew how to handle it. So for a teacher that was coming to me and trying to have me predict kind of where they were going to be in 2 weeks, I'm like, we might have a tool that's going to solve this, but in the immediate world right now, we don't. And so you were kind of living that live because you were like, okay, I want to be able to video call, but there's all these restrictions. And then look, 2 days later, those restrictions are, something that we're not concerned about or that we found a solution to. And so now you don't have that hurdle anymore. And I think that your insight in what hurdles you were bumping into is very similar to what other districts are going to be experiencing this week and next week as they start getting into remote learning, because they either have learned from your district and are able to come out stronger, or they haven't. So we're going to kind of repeat history for a few areas in our country.
Yeah, absolutely. And then it was a matter of actually connecting with some of the students, and you find a lot of different types of students, and some of them were so excited to instantly connect. As soon as I made a post out to the families, really, and I said, have your students check their email because I'm going to send them a link and we'll be able to connect. And some kids like just love that. They pop in and say hello to me every day just to say hello.
Right. Yeah, I was so excited. I have a few things that I actually am starting today, because today is my first day of remote learning with my 156 graders. And I spent all day yesterday on different phone calls and, Google Hangouts to try and collaborate with my team and my school on how we're implementing these pieces, because they sent out information Sunday night and here we are Tuesday morning implementing. But to be fair, I've had 2 weeks to live vicariously through all of you and all these amazing people that are commenting to kind of see what things I need to consider. So I did feel like I was at least, one step closer to finding a solution. But this morning specifically, one of the first things I have to do is I never had a Google Classroom, or at least I haven't for this class this year. And so they need to log into that. So I had a few different things. It was very easy to get a hold of them. They kind of know where we start is on my website. And so I just posted it big and bold on my website. And it was funny because the first thing they had to do was comment and say hello. Yeah. And it was like, oh, so nice. For the past few hours, and actually even last night, students coming in and being like, we're here, we're finally connected.
Yeah.
It's so fun. Yeah. I love it.
A lot of them, they love that. They love that connection. And, what we fortunately use a lot of Google Classroom. So my students were used to it. The other aspect of it for me was that my own children, I have 3 children, and my own children were working on their schoolwork at the same time that I was trying to teach my students, and that's still the case.
Yeah,
that presents a whole other challenge.
Well, and I think that lens, and not to harp on the hard weeks that you've been having, but that lens was really helpful for me as well, because again, a lot of the teachers were either looking so far in the future that I wasn't necessarily able to help, or they were educators that didn't have distractions at home. Yeah. And so when you're talking to parents who are educators, the challenges that they're going through is so different. And to be able to support not only your students virtually, but your students in your household who may not have the same district requirements, their teachers are figuring it out. So you have hurdles of teachers making decisions that maybe aren't as beneficial for the student, but they're learning as well. And so you're kind of juggling 15 different hats, and probably more so than that.
I put together a very, kind of down and dirty video for really my friends, because they had no experience with Google Classroom. And quite frankly, if you didn't work in education, how would you have experience with Google Classroom? Mm-hmm. So they'd ask me, well, how, I'd get text messages. How do I know if they turn this in? Where is the turn in button? And so, I kind of put that together, which was just helpful. It was easy for me to do. But it was helpful to a lot of people just to say, oh, and kind of when you get into it, it's like anything else. When it's brand new, it's intimidating, and then when you see there's actually not that many components to Google Classroom,
right?
Oh, okay, and then they feel better.
It's funny. Alex brought up yesterday in our daily drop-in. I know he's very active in the comments. The support that we need to provide for families, and to be honest, I think a lot of that are some of those tools we can provide at teachbetter.com. If you have an idea for a download that you're looking for families to have, we can absolutely throw something together. We have a large network that continues to send us resources that we continue to post at teachbetter.com under the free downloads or under our blogs or in our courses, because we want to give you exposure. But a lot of what our families need, to be honest, I don't know if I should say this on camera, we can't provide. A lot of it is seeing your face in a video, explaining what we might be able to brainstorm here on a daily drop-in, but they really do want to hear it from you, and they really do want to have that opportunity to connect with you as the educator. So, while a free download is awesome, and if you have ideas, we'll continue to make them, but really for my families, a lot of them is I recorded a bunch of videos yesterday for my families, just saying, hey, it's going to be okay. Here's a few quick things you want to pay attention to specifically in my classroom for literally this week. And then it might change, but for this week, and, the ability to kind of humanize this experience and give them a little grace. We continue to say on our daily drop-ins, teachers, give yourself a little grace. You're working really hard. We believe in you. And our parents need to hear that, but it needs to come from you, you know?
Yeah. I actually just finished a blog. I just finished a blog post, and it was inspired by the whole feeling, the added pressure of being an educator and being a parent, and why my initial thoughts were that my children's work should be perfect because I'm here, but I'm not really here during the day. We're all doing our own thing. My husband is now working from home. So, we're all under one roof and we're in kind of our different corners of the house working, but I'm not on top of them because I can't be. I'm following up with my own students.
Yeah. And that is not only a tough decision to make, but a lot of good, acknowledgement of just because you're home doesn't mean you're able to support your kids like you'd like to. Some things got to give. And so you're kind of you're hoping that the teachers are doing what they can to support your own children, so you can do what you can to support other people's children.
Yeah, and my kids are very fortunate. Their teachers are great, and they know me, so we work well together. The irony is, next week is my children's spring break, and the following week is my spring break. So at least we get a little reprieve there. I could just concentrate on me next week, and on them the following week. So that'll be helpful.
Becky, we're getting some good questions. I'm seeing that Mark is posting right now a question for me about my classroom. I think it would be helpful for the two of us to kind of go through what our standing is right now in our classroom, what we're offering, what we're using, and acknowledging the fact that this may change in a week. Yes. We might adapt what we're doing differently 2 hours from now. But I did a live video with Caitlin on Sunday, kind of talking through what I think I'm going to do. And then now 2 days later, I'm actually making that decision. I'm implementing it. Whereas you have had a few weeks of doing this, and you probably have even a different system for your own kid. So do you want to start us off with kind of a general, 1,000-point view? What does Becky's classroom look like? What tools are you using? What's the expectation?
Sure. I've been trying a couple of different things. And this week, actually, I'm trying something new again. I was posting daily in Google Classroom the date. Here's your assignments for today. And what I found through my own children's experience and my experience is to keep it as simple as possible. Yeah. And so I have everything on the stream in Google Classroom. And then there might be 1 or 2 documents that I have them jump over to classwork for. Different teachers I've seen have done this differently. Some people put it all in classwork. I just kind of like to have it on that front page on the stream. And I teach math and science and health actually too. So what I've been trying to do is really, the math obviously is where I'm really concentrating, but I'll add one activity in science each day. And then I might throw in a health in place of a science. So I'm really trying not to overload the students with, here's 5 things under science that you have to do today, and here's 5 things under math, and just trying to keep it simple. I've been using Google Meets and Google Zoom, so I set up a set times. I do it on Eastern Standard, so I do it 9:30 and then 11:30, and kids can pop in. I've tried originally I tried scheduling individual sessions or in groups of 2 or 3. For some kids that works, for some kids it wasn't working. So that's what I mean. It really, I was literally changing it sometimes twice a week or, weekly, because you have to just play around. And you have to play around with what works for you, because I started driving myself crazy trying to schedule everything, and it wasn't working.
No, I totally understand that. And so I had all that information from you and these other amazing educators participating. And after brainstorm with Caitlin, I'm like, okay, I'm going to take things by week. So I'm taking a little bit different of approach, but I think that that's because we both have different students, different expectations, and we have different styles of teaching. And so that's why I think it's kind of cool to hear yours, and then mine's going to be very different, but that's a good thing, right? So,
and then what I ended up doing now this week is I'm posting, yesterday was a little bit of a break for us, but I'm posting for the week. Here's what you have for the week. Yep. And then it's due by Friday, because, one of the biggest things that I've realized, one of the biggest lessons learned for me is what you're lacking from the home environment, which we have in school, is you have little to no control over what gets done when. So you might have students, I might have students that are rolling out of bed at 11:30 and then just starting work. And then I have some whippersnappers who are up at 7 a.m., like before I am, before I've poured my coffee, and they're sending messages like, okay, what can I do today? Okay, what, so it's really, you don't have that where, where when the kids are sitting with you, even when they're, working on their grid or they're working at a personalized pace and they're at different spots, it's much easier to just pop over to their desk or to have them come over to you and have a quick discussion with them. And you don't have that luxury. I can send a message to them through Google Chat. They do like Google Chat. But I'm always waiting back for a response, or there's this lag time that you don't have in the classroom. And that takes getting used to.
Oh, you're totally right. Yeah, so I'm doing something very similar to now that change that you've made. I'm releasing content by week. So I talked about this in our daily drop-in yesterday, more in depth, but essentially I need to find an activity to engage my students somewhere between 15 and 30 minutes a day. Yeah. So I'm creating a week-long kind of like set of assignments and learning opportunities for students. I am giving them like some sort of suggestion of how, kind of what my thinking was and what order they would do them in and how I recommended that. But actually, our first few days are going to be teaching the students how to set up their calendar for how they want to work throughout the week. Setting up their workspace is actually the first thing that students are doing in my classroom. And so what I'm giving them actually at a team level is really consistent with all the teachers that they see throughout their day. So we have an assignment notebook that we post, and it's an embedded Google Doc that color codes the teachers' names and kind of gives them a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So that's a great first spot to go for a student to be able to see kind of what they have for the week. And we all universally decided we'll be posting by week. So on Monday, or this week, Tuesday, because we're starting today, but on Monday, every single week, they can kind of see their entire week. And then the first task that they have from one teacher in our team is to kind of make an ideal plan for how they want to execute that work. So really providing a lot of those essential skill scaffolding before we get into any content. Yeah. The other thing is that we've all universally agreed that we are kicking off information in Google Classroom. So when you see on that assignment page, the hub of where that's all located will be in Google Classroom, which is different for me because I don't use that. So that's a new tool that I'm using. I've used it in the past, but obviously there's been a lot of updates. And then within my Google Classroom, I'll not only include the assignments for the week, but thanks to Caitlin Giordano's idea, I'm going to do a daily challenge every morning. So every morning there'll be something for students to do or comment on, and that's just for fun, just because, keep them kind of engaged. But with all that information, that's how we're kind of utilizing our set. So for me personally, a lot of the content this week is not math focused. It's kind of like getting spaces ready, sharing where you've been, what you've been experiencing the past few weeks. And then I'm going to decide following all the weeks following, we're doing themed grids that will change every week. So I'm just releasing, one specific area of information. I think next week is going to be fractions or decimals, like some big picture idea. And there'll be a few different optional tasks that they can explore. A lot of them will be exploration based, which I'm excited to execute. And then the last piece of this is that they can not only email us, obviously, we're in contact with them from 9 to 2 Central Time, which is required for my district, but we're also doing team office hours. So all the teachers on the team that the student works with actually has the ability to meet with us in like a Google Meet atmosphere around 1:15 every day. So they do have the opportunity to pop in and see teachers and, ask questions, but it's with the whole team, which will be fun.
Yeah, I do. And I do like that option. Like I said, you have kids that take advantage of it every day just to say hello. And then there's other kids, I think, who, are a little shyer and don't really, necessarily want or feel that they need that. But it's definitely a work in progress. Now, let me ask you a question. Are you teaching any new content? I know you're not this week, but is the plan to eventually get to some new content?
Great question. So ISB came out with information that first of all, we're not able to grade anything at this time, and that no new content will be introduced. So the difference with my class, though, and the lens that I'm taking is that I am going to take the next few weeks and provide review information from units that we've already been exposed to. I have tons of things that we can circle back and re-explore, and new activities that I didn't offer to the first time that I can offer now around the same information. But my students always have exposure to enrichment. You know, I use the grid method, so they always have learning opportunities that scaffold towards mastery, and then they always have exposure to enrichment. So the new content that my students could explore will be just deeper dives into similar content that we've had exposure to. So I think that's where I'm going to start until the state gives us more direction. I do see that Mark Heller is commenting that students do really like to see that weekly view versus the daily. And I think that kind of lends itself well to that self-paced model. You know, teachers introduce things day by day for a lot of reasons because they like the control of that. The reality is that we've lost all control. I was just talking to one of my tech leaders yesterday about this. So the strain that teachers have in wanting to keep control, which is why a lot of teachers don't go to a mastery classroom, you've eliminated anyway. You're not going to have control. You don't have control over what your students do. So operate with no fear and give them a week's view, give them a unit's view, and help them with the management of it more so than anything else. You know, I think it's a good opportunity to dabble with something that could be scary.
Well, I did tell them that we're going to try it this way this week. And I'm going to put up a poll. You know, I love polls.
I love it.
And see, you know, what they prefer. I said, I'm still going to post, you know, daily to make sure that you're checking in and things like that. It's very interesting what you were saying, because I've heard that from a lot of educators too, is that you're not allowed to collect grades, whereas we're being told we are supposed to still be collecting grades. So that adds a whole different dynamic to it, and at least it's for now. So part of me wishes that I was in a place where you were, which was you had more time to really think about this a little bit more and prepare for what direction you wanted to go in. But then part of me is like, I was probably just better off. I'm an overthinker, so I was probably just better off jumping in and seeing what sticks to the wall as I go. But it's definitely, you know, both ways have their challenges for sure. But I think that, you know, I think if this is, you know, originally this was a 2-week plan, and we are now in week 3. So it was, you know, kind of proceed business as usual, keep doing new content and keep collecting grades. And we've been told, you know, we're going to be doing that at least through our spring break, which is another, not this week, but we have next week too. Right. And then I think they'll be revisiting.
Yeah, I know.
Going forward.
Yeah, and every state, every district, every part of the country is handling this differently. And so as teachers, we can dwell on that and we can wish that we were in a different spot. I'm seeing a lot of comments right now being like, oh, my district's doing this, my district's doing this. And the reality is we're allowed to have opinions on that, right? We're educators. We are very opinionated and we feel like we know what's best for students. But the truth is that we can only kind of offer what we can offer. And so with my district saying no new content, we did spend with we had a team, a teacher meeting yesterday. There was some conversation, 10, 20 minutes of teachers complaining that they couldn't introduce new content. And I'm not saying that you can't gripe. I mean, we have an entire chapter in the Teach Better book of, you know, complain better. But the reality is that we can't do anything about it. So right. We can spend 20 minutes of our time griping about how unfair and how personally I don't agree with your district taking grades. I'm sure there's elements that you don't agree with me not being able to introduce new content because we want our students to grow. We all have our opinions. Yeah. But the reality is like, so what are you going to do about it? Like, you know. Right.
And the reality is this is unprecedented for anyone. So it's not like someone's done this before and knows this has definitely worked or this definitely hasn't worked. So, you know, I think it's like anything else. People are more concerned the ripple effect for the future. You know,
which we're all going to have to accommodate for.
Yeah.
We're all going to have to accommodate that our world will look different in August. We've said that numerous times in our daily drop-ins. The truth is that while it will look different, will you be ready as an educator? Will you be ready to differentiate and modify and fill in the gaps, you know, better than you were a few months ago at maybe that skill?
Yeah.
You know, somebody asked, Alex, it looks like, asked just about the devices that our students have and the internet access they have. I think it's probably important to preface because we went through what our weeks kind of look like, what our planning looks like right now, would you mind, Becky, giving us some insight on what your students have access to? You said that they're one-to-one in devices. Yeah. How about internet access?
I'm lucky that everyone in my classes, I basically have a group of students in the morning and then a group of different fifth graders in the afternoon, and they all have internet access. So, I'm fortunate just kind of the area. I think there was one or two kids in our school that maybe did not have it, and they were, I know that our administration was kind of working to accommodate them. Right. I'm in a different spot, and I'm lucky. I'm very fortunate in that regard, and I recognize that too. I mean, that's a whole other set of challenges.
Well, and that's the struggle. Is I've had a lot of teachers, actually the majority of teachers that I feel like I've been coaching the past few weeks, have had struggles with not having internet, and we've done a lot in our discussions with them to try and support them as much as possible. Not having access to technology and not having access to internet does change the game. Yes. But on the flip side, especially like in these live videos, I'm not going to lie. Like, I have access to one-to-one technology. My students have been one-to-one for over 7 years. And the majority of my students had internet access, but actually I can applaud my district. The first thing that they started working on when we kind of paused our school year was getting internet access, partnering with Comcast, partnering with other providers of hotspots to give that to families. And while I know that's not perfect right now, they have done so much work where, for me personally, devices and internet access isn't a hurdle that I'm currently dabbling with. I am dabbling with families who have 12 people living in their house and they don't have structure and time and all these other, most of my students' parents are working because we have a lot of family members that work in grocery stores and gas stations. And, I have areas that I'm supporting students. That's just not one area that I'm concerned about right now for them.
No, it's not. I mean, I just get a glimpse of it, though, in my own household. So I have my own Chromebook device that was issued from my school. My oldest son, who's in middle school, has his own. But my fourth grader and second grader didn't. So one of the initial things from the district I live in was sending out an access survey to all the families regarding devices and internet. And we have enough, but the kind of the funny little thing that I've realized here is that, our computer, the one computer we have doesn't have a camera. The other computer does. So I have my two younger students who, have to kind of fight for, I need to record a video. I need to hop on Google Meet with my teacher. And so the one computer, they're kind of like, swapping back and forth just so that they can get that done. I mean, there's a lot of considerations for this. And my daughter, who's in second grade, who hadn't really used Google Classroom much at all, everything suddenly was on Google Classroom. And so I remember the first couple of days she was in tears because she was trying to, I'm in between calls myself, trying to hop on and say, okay, here's where you go to find this. Here's where you go to find that. So even having the technology for the younger kids is even harder sometimes because they're just not used to using it in that volume. They're still very much using manipulatives in class.
Yeah, it's a learning curve for sure. And we as educators really need to be cognizant not only of this learning curve for them, but also that our learning opportunities cannot be all dedicated to videos and screen time. That was a major conversation that I had yesterday with a group of teachers, that I know it's not what we're comfortable with necessarily, depending on the type of educator you are. But, I could either offer students a requirement to go learn fractions on a tech tool, or I could ask them to go into their house and find a way to model fractions with supplies at their house. And, there's so many different opportunities that we have for students to go explore. I was working with a writing teacher yesterday where the writing prompt was go sit somewhere outside and write something, versus, writing on their computer. There's so many different prompts that we really need to be dynamic in our mediums in which our students are learning, because we really have to be careful that they don't just sit in front of their computer for 8 hours every single day.
It's true. I thank you for, and who knew it would come in such handy, but I thank you for introducing me to Seesaw, because it's been so much fun. One of the first things I did for science, we were talking about mixtures and solutions. I said, okay, now I need you to go around your house and find a mixture and find a solution and show it to me on camera. And they like things like that. I mean, it's fun. And it's real life application.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's funny. I've had this lens. It was super weird talking to teachers about this yesterday because I don't mean to like share my entire life with everybody on camera, but you know that I'm starting with the majority of my week. I'm starting here in our daily drop-in with all of you, right? So you see me sitting here in my chair. Well, then on Mastery Chat nights, if I'm a part of the live recap, or last night when we did 3 podcast recordings, I'm still here sitting in this chair. And so I appreciate those of you that have reached out. They're like, Ray, you sit in your office for 12 hours a day on camera. And I'm like, sometimes it does feel that way. So can you imagine how that feels for a child? I mean, I'm, a grown adult, and at least I'm having interactions, on phone calls and live videos. If our students are sitting in front of a camera all day, we are torturing them.
Yeah, that's why it's, I know a lot of districts, and I think this has not been followed because they realized it was unrealistic. Some districts said, okay, you have to, be logged on for this class at this time. It's just an unrealistic scenario. Honestly, as you mentioned, for a lot of these kids, some of them are not with their parents, they're with grandparents, or they're with a sitter who's watching them. And so they get the work done. And all I've said is that I just care to see that they're trying, even if they're not keeping up with the pace per se, that they're trying to submit things and that they're putting effort in it. And they really, the vast majority of them are. I've been super impressed with how they've handled this. But I told them going in when we knew, like I said, when I had a feeling, I said, I really don't think we're going to be here next week. I said, but we've got this because you've been almost preparing this without even knowing. We've been preparing for this all year. Mm-hmm. So if there ever had to be a time of the year, a good time of the year to be remote learning, I would have preferred it now versus, October when, they walk in and they're brand new.
Right. And you're trying to put in the procedures and management elements in place that we're not using virtually. My students kind of echoed the same thing before our school closed, is that a lot of them were like, Miss Hewart, we're not really worried about our class. Like there's other classes we're concerned about where there's so many questions, but for our class, like we know how to communicate with you. We know where resources are located. We've had that consistency, and they know how the management of the classmate goes because I was already giving up the ownership so that they could take the ownership of their own learning. And so that's kind of the struggle that we're continuing to dabble with, is depending on the type of classroom you had set up, really depends on how challenging this is now. And we just need to continue to learn and ask the right questions so we all become the best that we can be in this time,
I agree. And I think you had alluded to, you're working with your team, and I have a partner teacher that I work very well with as well. So we're in constant communication and, making sure that we stay on the same page with things, because that is super important too. And not everybody has that luxury either.
Mm-hmm. That was a funny conversation I had. I was doing a Google Meet with our tech director, and he's like, how has the feedback been from teachers you've been working with the past few weeks? And I'm like, honestly, everybody's overwhelmed. That is universal. There's no teacher right now being like, I got this piece of cake, right? But the reality is like, depending on the management, I know Andrea just commented grid method and self-paced for the win. That is what I said. I'm like, the teachers that were operating in a self-paced mastery framework, whether it be the grid method or something else, do have the luxury right now of feeling a little bit more comfortable. He's like, why is that? Is that because the grid method is this amazing thing? And I'm like, well, no, like the grid method's a great framework and I'm totally supportive of it, but it really has more to do with the educator changing their philosophy on learning and creating a culture of learning. Caitlin and I were live together on Sunday talking about, I'm not worried about my students being willing to learn, because the culture in our classroom is that they have ownership and learning is fun and learning grows them as people to be better, versus the educators that take the approach of, well, I'm standing in front of the room, they should be listening. And so as your philosophy shifted, or depending on what your philosophy was in the classroom, it really does impact you in remote learning. And I'm hoping that teachers take that lens and come back stronger in setting up the culture of their classroom, whenever that may be, because that culture is making remote learning easier or drastically more challenging.
100%. Yes, it does have a lot to do with control and like I said, being flexible, and being understanding. I mean, I think what I've told people too is what everybody seems to forget in this whole scenario, because, especially for me, like we hit the ground running, is there is a whole emotional and mental toll that this entire experience has taken on everyone. And, a lot of students are missing their friends. They're concerned about family members getting sick. Like there's that whole component, not just for the kids, but for the teachers, for their families. And you can't discount that. It's not like we're sitting home, twiddling our thumbs and doing remote learning. I mean, you're surrounded by the news. And so that's, like I said, that mentally, whether you realize it or not, that subconsciously plays a big part in everybody's, mood. And some days are better than others for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. We have another great comment here. And remember that if you're listening to this after our recording on Teach Better Talk podcast or on YouTube, you can participate live in the comments with us over in our private group at teachbettergroup.com. It's the Teach Better Team private Facebook group where all these comments are coming in and kind of sparking this discussion. It says, I'm starting today with all new kids. She's in a STEM or design teacher. So worried about setting up everything for kids I've never met. And I think the reality of that is so tricky. Yeah. Do not start with content. Do not start with anything but procedures and building relationships. That's where we start every single class at the beginning of the year or when our students change. And that's where we have to start now with remote learning. Yeah. It's so important to get to know your students, have them do goofy challenges, have them share their personalities, share their loves and their dislikes, and, continue to explore so that they really feel like a connection to you, even though that's so challenging virtual.
Yeah, making it fun and meaningful. I've read a lot of things about that too. Don't just give them work for the sake of giving them work. Make it meaningful, and that should be, like you said, that should be your mantra all the time. So, and Andrea says that she's worried about conferencing at the end. Because that it will look different, but it is fun. If you have the ability to connect with them on Zoom or on Google Meet, I send them a message through Google Chat, and you can actually pop a video in right there. And so I'll say, hey, click the link and we'll talk. And, they like that feature. I'm older, so I remember the days of AOL chat rooms. I was telling somebody, I'm like, so for me, I'm like, oh, this is, the kids, the students themselves are like, what is this? I'm like, oh, this is old school.
Old school. I love that. Yeah, Andrea, I have the same thought process because as I start releasing grids to students to review content, she's referencing at the end of the level in the grid. I usually do some sort of large formative assessment in a major conference with a student, which can either be in small groups or individually. Andrea, I'm just going to utilize video as much as possible. We're going to pop back messages back and forth in Seesaw. We're going to pop back messages in Google Meet. We're going to do a lot of different things, but I am going to do conferences. It may not be a live conference. We might be conferencing over the series of like an hour of sending messages back and forth. But I'm saying that knowing, Andrea, you know me, I am totally I don't really like writing or reading. It's a skill that I struggle with. I audio listen to all my stuff. So a lot of the work I'm going to do is to make my life easier. I know that I'm better speaking out loud in an audio form or recording a video. So that's how I'm going to give feedback. And I think my students will appreciate that medium. But that also, like, to be completely honest, is because it's easier for me to do that. It's easier.
I've found that myself. And I think of you, Ray, every time I record myself, even if it's like a short little math lesson, I record myself and, I think, what would Ray do? WWRD. What would Ray do?
It's so funny. Like, I totally do it as a crutch. It's easier for me, but I'm glad that people use it. But even in, Voxer, I don't know. Yeah, like, I use Voxer all the time. And we have a Voxer of, I'm joking about this with Chad. I'm going to pick on Chad for a second. I think he's in here. So Chad very clearly likes to write things out because Chad and I, when we Vox back and forth, I'm doing it in like an audio form where I'm holding down the walkie-talkie and talking, and then he responds via text. And so it's funny. Everybody has their mediums that they prefer, but me typing it out takes so much longer. The video is so much easier. The audio is so much easier. So whatever. Choose your poison.
I think you guys introduced me to Voxer. I was like, wow, where has this been all my life? I agree with you. It's 100% easier.
It's so much easier. Well, Becky, I know we've been live for about 45 minutes. We both have classrooms and students that we're going to be supporting all day long today. I appreciate you sharing kind of all the small pieces and large pieces that you've kind of overcome and structured as an educator. If there was one big takeaway or one suggestion that you wanted all educators to hear, whether they be teachers or administration, whether they're just getting into remote learning or maybe they're a veteran like you, they've been in it for 2 whole weeks,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. A veteran.
Yes. What would you really hope they take away? What would be your key piece of insight?
Well, I think it's what we tell teachers all the time, but it's especially true now. You have to be flexible and you have to be empathetic and don't take things personally. If students are not connecting right away, or if you have to find a couple of different methods to kind of track them down and see how they are, but just, be as patient as you can, given these circumstances, and be flexible and be willing to change your plan. So you might go in with one plan and like I said, you kind of have to alter it as you go, and that's okay.
No, it's so important. And Becky, I love having you share that because I know that you're an educator that a lot of our network admires and looks up to. And I think it's important that they hear from you and everybody else that we are all changing because we are all trying things that either don't go well or do go well. And so to kind of have you give permission of hey, I tried something and then I changed it because it didn't work. And that doesn't mean that I'm a failure. It doesn't mean that I'm doing anything wrong. It just means I'm trying something else. And we all need to be operating in that lens. So thank you. I appreciate you.
You're welcome. And the other thing I would just say to people is walk away, take breaks, walk away, because the first couple of days in particular, it's very consuming. And, it's easier to walk out of your school and be like, okay, I'll come back to it tomorrow. It's harder to do when you're at your house.
Yeah.
So, just take time for yourself. Really, it's very important.
Yeah, those parameters and even just holding yourself accountable for work hours becomes more challenging because I'm working in my office. So I can leave my office, but it's still 2 feet away, from everything else.
Right.
That you're doing. So
run back in and finish something. So
yeah, absolutely. So setting up those boundaries, right? Knowing your boundaries is really important.
Take the dogs for a walk, Ray. That's your order today.
Yes, I know. I feel like we need to do a virtual walk because I haven't seen your puppy in a while, and we have matching dogs kind of, and I really love that.
We do.
Every time I see a post of Clifford, I'm like, oh, so cool.
All right. Good luck in your first day of official remote teaching.
I know. Yes. Good luck to everybody. We appreciate you. Thank you for all that you do.
For checking in. Good luck to everybody.
Yeah, we'll see you tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. Central, 8 a.m. Eastern for our daily drop-in happening Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. We'll see you there.
Bye-bye.